Hello, friends, and welcome to Spirit Chat. And I'm very, very excited about this. And I'm doing this live with my brother. Yes, hold on. I don't like that one. Hold on. Hello, friends, and welcome to Spirit Chat. And I would love to say that I'm very, 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 very excited about my guest. I'm honored and blessed that he agreed to be here today. And that is, I'd like to introduce you to my brother, David Donnelly.
Hello. Hello there.
Yes, that's my brother. And the reason why I invited my brother on to my show is because one, he always fascinates me with his words, his wisdom, his knowledge in regards to energy work, breath work, just him as a man, him as a father, him as a partner. I just love him. I do. Can you tell I'm so excited? You have to go look at the YouTube video to see him looking at me right now. So we're here to shoot the shit. We are going to have a conversation. And the conversation that we would like to chat about more than anything is breath work. And I'm just going to have my brother, I'm going to have David just share with you a little bit about himself. Hopefully he agrees to that. Do you agree to that, David?
I do agree.
Okay. And so just for my listeners, just so you know, you may hear the odd chime or bird or whatever. He's doing this podcast with me in his beautiful backyard. So just to let you know that he is outdoors. So his sound, the quality may not be the greatest. So David,
I'll make sure to speak up.
What was that?
Sound travels very well out here anyway.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So what do you want to share with us regarding how did you get into this? What started this for you, your journey?
Well, the very beginning, I would say, would be not sleeping at night when I was a kid and just exploring my imagination. And I was always into Star Wars, as you remember. So it was a
Yes.
lot of Jedi, which led me to finally the idea of, well, what is the Force? And so that's something for a young child, I think was interesting to explore just the idea or the sensations of what something like that would be like. But in my own imagination, I would travel through space. And so that kind of got me out of my body and got me into my imagination and exploring my imagination. But I had, a lot of emotional issues. We didn't
Mhm.
have the easiest upbringing, of course.
No, we didn't.
And so my emotions, my breathing, everything was kind of wrapped up in the same issues biologically and emotionally. And when I got into martial arts more later in my early 20s, one of my instructors had noticed that whenever I got onto the ground with someone, if they got on top of me, I would begin to panic. And that panic was because of my breathing. So as you recall, having asthma
Yeah.
my whole life
Hmm.
and having to learn to deal with that. And asthma can wrap itself up emotionally and
Hmm.
it can wrap itself up physically. And so it has many different aspects of how it triggers. In fact, if anything, it has triggers. And so having to work with uh, my breath and going into that was something that really changed my life forever. And so this man actually took me aside and started teaching me pranayama, which is the true breathing exercises behind yoga. And when I moved back to this was out in BC, and so when I moved back to Ontario, then I really started to just calm down. I got away from martial arts. I needed to just calm the fuck down.
You?
And so, yeah. And so I really got heavily into yoga. As you know, I've been meditating for a long time anyway. But my meditations, again, were always based in my imagination.
Hmm.
And so being able to connect with my breath and being able to ground myself began to give my meditations a very different trajectory. And it began to teach me, I guess, in some ways, uh, because I would connect. I can't say what I was connecting with. We'll just say the universe, my higher self, how my higher self translates the universe. And so it just began teaching me, unfortunately, everything. I don't mean everything in human drama world. I
Yes.
mean everything in like universal connection and energy. And so, well, I can't say everything because that's infinite, but a tremendous amount. more than I could handle. And so working my breath with it allowed me to process that information
Yes.
and allowed me to ground myself so that I could process that information maturely and calmly, instead of uh, every time I'd have an epiphany at first, it would set my adrenals off, right? It'd be like, oh my God, this connects with this, which connects with that. And I'd go crazy because I'd see 1,000
Yeah, I
connections.
think you still do.
Why I'm calmer now in it.
You
But yeah, I mean,
still
the
do.
universe
Yeah.
still, I'm still in awe. And that's what's awesome about the universe, is the fact that, if you can keep your childlike heart, it will always surprise you. You will always be in awe of the beauty of even in awe of how people can be on one side of the fence so negative and you know fuck things up, but then so beautiful and so passionate and compassionate on the other, and be so helpful and communal and all of this. And so we see all of these different elements of people. And so this allowed me to explore those sides of myself in my breath. But the thing that led me the most was really coming to understand my fear. Really learning, because with asthma, panic is a large issue. Excuse me. Dealing with the exhalation is what actually trained me, because with asthma, the psychology gets warped and you begin grasping for the breath. The funny thing is, this just doesn't in asthma. Whenever people go into emotional situations, if they have anxiety or any of these things, usually depression, the breath gets weaker. You're not breathing much. With anxiety, you're over breathing, and you're breathing up here, panic breath usually too. And so the idea is to sink the breath into the core, breathe with the whole core, and that allows you to relax. It allows your organs to relax. It allows you to relax your nervous system. It's very somatic. It allows you to calm down. And then in that process, you're able to see things clearer. And so when you get into the exhalation, for me, it taught me not to take the breath, because instead what it taught me how to do was to receive the breath. And so I would do that through exhaling. Like a vacuum cleaner, I would empty myself completely, and then just by relaxing, the breath would come in on its own. I would receive it. And this took training, of course, because panic likes to get in there. We're greedy, right? We have greedy
And
minds, we're
and
greedy
is
body.
this through, how most people who do study breath work, I know, and if you can elaborate on this, that when we're babies, we're born to inhale through the Buddha breath, through the belly.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
as we grew older, we became lazy, and then it's all up in the chest. So it's chest breathing.
Well, it's great that you bring it back to the baby,
Yeah.
because to be honest with you, this is where I really came to understand more than myself and the universe at large, and more than that, the idea of creation. I don't like to say creator. That always makes me think of something that's ended now, or the creator, he created it. Well, I like the idea of creation. It's just always going. It's just always.
Yep.
And so there is a design. And when we're born, we're breathing naturally. But what that's doing is also massaging your internal organs with every breath. And we're supposed to massage our internal
That's
organs with
right.
every breath.
Yes.
If you don't, imagine living a life where you're not massaging your organs with every breath when you're supposed to be.
But here's the thing, though, too. We're not taught this, David.
No,
We're not
that's a
taught
whole
this.
other thing of consciousness. We in the way we've disconnected with nature, we've taken our process of communication. It's verbal, it's outward. We write, we draw. Everything is external, and we've externalized it because we've externalized ourselves from nature, even though we are nature. Everything else communicates without it. They have certain sounds, but most of it's done internally. The horse knows how to walk. The animals know how to breathe. They don't have to be taught the natural process. There's some things they might have to be taught how to hunt, little things like this. But for the most part, they rely on instinct. Ask a human what instinct feels like to them. They're going to go off on some shallow end thing of, well, I just know when my gut tells me. but your gut, if you have anxiety, is going to tell you wrong because your mind is controlling your gut. Now, when you're a baby, everything is true. Every sound that comes out of you is truth because it's coming from the truth of the baby.
And the
right?
baby, the body doesn't lie.
The body never lies. If I killed someone and was put under a polygraph and said, nope, I didn't do it, my body would be like, fuck him, he did it.
Yeah.
Right. And it would betray me because my body will give the truth. Unless I'm a sociopath, I can get away with it then.
Yeah.
But other than that, because they're wired differently.
So back to the baby. Back to the baby.
Yeah. So back to the baby. Everything is natural in the baby. This is when you're connected the most.
Yes.
And this is when you're living truth the most. I can't say what truth is, but I can certainly say that my body knows how to express it.
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly say that when I open up to my real feelings, not my emotions, my feelings, they speak truth. Yes. Emotions can be very confusing. The emotions are set more in the aspect of the verbal mind, the ego. Feelings themselves are much more deeper rooted, connected into our instinct and how we really need to be reacting to our environment and connecting with our environment or connecting with the universe in that sense. And so when we ground in our breath and it relaxes everything, the body understands that you're reconnecting. It knows this. You're shifting back into the natural pattern of the natural design. And when you are sitting in the natural design, the information just flows. And when you're not sitting in it, the information becomes muddy, like a I always like to say when you're really in that place, you know it because you're it's like you're facing a pond which is reflecting the universe itself, right? It's calm, it's reflecting. If I took a pebble and threw it in there, you'd see every ripple and understand every direction. However, you can have a mind that's just like a raging ocean crashing against a shoreline of rocks. You throw a pebble in there, you don't even see it hit the water because there's that much chaos.
Yeah.
And so the mind gets that way. And it's the breath that allows us to ground the nervous system, to ground the emotions, right? Our hormones. Every system in our body is rooted back to the breath and is controlled by the breath. Like I don't like to use the word control. However, it's more like the orchestrator in an orchestra.
I like that.
Okay. And so he, that or she is the one conducting how the whole orchestra has to go. Exactly. But imagine if your trumpet player comes in and he's all hammered one night, and he's like, right? At least there's control. I can get in there and try to correct that. But what happens if the orchestrator comes in and he's hammered? Right? It's all just cacophony.
My viewers have to, or my listeners have to see this just to view.
But you can imagine a body like an orchestra if it's not being conducted properly.
Yes.
And so your breath is in my feelings, the breath is the true expression of consciousness.
Ooh.
And this is what connects with consciousness.
Yes.
Right? Because it's kind of like, well, where is consciousness? We can never say, like the radio, you can't rip the radio apart to find the DJ. He's not in there.
Yeah.
He's not in there. And you can't rip me apart and find me in here either. I'm not in here. I'm an aspect of it. I am an expression of it. And so that starts first with the breath. Take away food. I bet I can go a month, maybe more, maybe way more. Take away water. I can last maybe a month if I can really stretch it out. Yeah. Take away the breath. I'm not lasting minutes. Mm-hmm. Done. It is the most important physical aspect of our human life. And we ignore it as if it is pretty much the most common, just whatever thing. And yet we don't know how to do it. I would say probably more than 95% of the human population on this planet today is breathing incorrectly and is creating a very tremendous amount of their own problems just by the way they're breathing. And they're not managing those issues because of it either.
But are you noticing, like, I don't know how much you're on social media, but I'm finding that there's more people that are waking up to it. There's people taking courses and teaching as
Yes.
well. So I believe that we are now waking up to it through meditation, yoga helps. But I've noticed that there's like instructors, like you can go for a weekend workshop. So I do this is that's what I'm saying. The timing of this conversation is amazing because we need you. We need, your knowledge, your wisdom, because you've been doing this for how many years? And I'm like,
I've been
so
doing this over 30 years.
I'm seeing all these workshops and I'm like, my brother's been doing this for years,
Yeah.
right? So
Well, I would say for myself, I feel like living proof because I mean, you know what I was like when I was young.
yeah.
I was a nutcase, and I did all of
Did a
this
lot of
myself.
people thought that was through ADHD? Did people think that of you?
I had a lot of things,
Well,
anywhere from bipolar to, yeah, I was, let's just say, you could diagnose me all over the board.
okay.
And even when I began studying psychology, I began to realize how useless it was to study it because I could generalize almost anything in there and identify myself as it. So I began to realize overdiagnosis is creating more issues. I'm overcomplicating this. And so by the time I got to the breath, I simplified it. Now, of course, then the universe complicated it by then literally just using me as a vessel of information
Mhm.
for years. For years, I couldn't hold down any real friendships because I couldn't talk with anybody. I had a hard time connecting with people because it was the only thing I could talk about because it was the only thing the universe was pumping into me.
I remember when
I remember one time you even said you're speaking alien to me, and that's how most
well,
people.
you know when that
Talk to me.
was, David? That's when
It
you
was a
came
long time
back.
ago.
But it's when you came back from China.
Yeah, when I came back from
That
China.
you came back a totally different person.
Yeah,
And I didn't know how to take you at the time. Like I said, you were talking a different language.
yeah,
And
and not
I
Chinese.
back then I wasn't into, I was newly married and a new mom and my head couldn't
Yeah,
wrap around where you
yeah,
were at. But now I look back and go, holy shit, you knew
yeah,
way back then what I know now.
yeah.
And,
Well,
I
I remember for you, it was childbirth, and that stimulated something. You had a major awakening and connection during childbirth, which, of course, is something I could never relate to, except that that was your chrysalis,
Mhm.
right? That was your chrysalis, and that was what broke you open, opened your cocoon into this new being. Mine was slower in that sense, but I did have one night where it happened all at once. And it was at a friend's house, and I was doing a standing meditation. And I've been doing it for quite a while. I can't tell you how long. I was probably standing there a good 2 hours. And then all of a sudden, so it's like in Lord of the Rings, there's that big giant eye, and it's kind of like like there's energy or whatever going in or out of it. Well, it
Yep.
looked like that. When I saw that movie, it freaked me out because that's basically what I saw. And it was like this universal eye where a tremendous amount of energy, it was like a vortex, was flowing into it, but also out of it at the same time. And then I heard like a billion voices. It felt like my brain was melting. And then I think I just collapsed, to be honest with you, because I woke up on the floor hours later and I was confused. I was like, what was that all about? And then for 2 years, it was just constant of that information. I couldn't sleep because it wanted to show me how universes were connected, how atoms were actual living organisms that were actual ecosystems. And it would show me not how they're built, but how they actually flow energy from one system of time into another, from one dimension into another, and how all of these things interconnect like an ecosystem
Mhm.
with ecosystems within ecosystems. And that's how I began to see energy all of a sudden. I began to see the entire universe, the multiverse itself, as a complete ecosystem of ecosystems, the human body as well as an ecosystem. And that opened me up to be able to see the multi layers of consciousness that was right there at my disposal, to all of our disposal, if we just tap into it. We just do. I don't like to use the word awaken because that just assumes that everyone else is asleep, like they're non-playing characters, and I
Yeah,
don't
I
think
hear you.
that.
I hear you. I agree.
Yeah, everyone moves at their own time.
Yeah.
I was a late bloomer in many areas of my life, and so I don't want to say, that someone else who's somewhere else in their life, they're where they need to be right now. You know, However, at some point, hey, let's all fucking wake up.
Well, I still think your big wake up was when you went and lived in China for what, a year? And
Well,
you,
it happened before that. It was actually out in BC, but coming back, that was my wake up. But I woke up groggy, and so I had a process. I needed like a whole qigong coffee for 2 years, right? And just bring it all in. And
yeah,
so
and my viewers don't know that. My listeners and viewers don't know that you do that as well. Qigong,
yes,
all of the energy, martial,
I mix it all together.
yeah.
And so I'm at a point now, even where if I'm going to teach it, I really prefer to teach both sides. I don't want to just teach martial and I don't want to just teach healing because there's a fine line between the two.
Mhm.
And there's a large area where consciousness integrates between those two realms. Just one example, let's say I could be sparring with, one of my students. I can notice his shoulder is out of, it's not doing good. And so I might, grab him, bring him down, and there's this point where you're just going between the line of breaking and healing. And it's a nice little place. And they trust me, and I'll just tweak it. And all of a sudden, boom, the shoulder opens up, and then they can relax and they can move, And so there's different approaching for different people too. You think I can get half those martial art guys on the table? Rub them down?
Nope.
No way. They're too right. Man touching me? What the fuck, man? Right? That's their insecurity. I'm not looking for that, right? And so they have to deal with that. But there's guys that will. They'll get on the table and go, "Yeah, fix me up, man. I hurt," and they get it. And so take that pain away, and they're easier husbands, I had a woman come in once, and I was treating her for a while. I also used to do traditional Chinese medicine and all this, which I dabble in sometimes still with friends and family, but I'm busy with many other things. But as I was working on her, she asked me to see her husband. So he came in and he had some serious pain issues, which I like to say, unfortunately, I treated in one issue because people look at that as some kind of miracle. I don't do miracles. I might participate in it, but everybody participates.
Channeler.
Yeah, well, not even that. We all have to participate in it. Everybody who's a part of it is participating in it. And so, he goes home, and then she comes in a week later, and she's like, "What did you do to my husband?" And at first, I'm like, "Oh shit, what did I do?" And then she's like, "He's like singing and whistling, doing the dishes. He's active." And I was like, "Oh, that's simple. He's not frustrated with pain anymore."
Mm-hmm.
She was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, maybe you weren't paying attention, but he was walking around for months and months and months in tremendous amount of pain. And when we removed the pain, we removed the frustration on his nervous system. And he could sing and dance and do the dishes again and be a happy husband."
Feel alive. Feel alive.
And feel alive rather than having to listen to that part of your body that's just screaming at you.
Yeah.
Do something, right?
Well, that's what I feel. Most people going forward is they're not actually taking the time to listen to their body, because I always say the body is your antenna. It's always speaking to you, telling you things, and especially where are they holding the block. So you said it was in his shoulder. Where was he holding the pain?
Right in, like
Right.
right in.
So
Yeah.
close to the heart, close to the throat,
It was from an accident.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm talking energy wise. Where's it
Yeah.
close to for the chakras? So
Yeah,
that,
oh, yeah, and it pressures on it. It
right?
constricts. It constricts. The heart closes down, like not down, but it shuts. It
Yeah.
goes into protection mode,
Protection.
right, and
Yeah.
defensive mode, and the nervous system starts to do the same thing, and the behavior and the personality will follow suit like a river. And unless you can remove the obstruction, the person can literally crystallize themselves into that over time if they don't deal with it.
Did you have him breathe? Like, did you do breathing
Oh
work?
yeah, anybody I work on, they got to know how to breathe through it.
Okay. Yeah.
I work their breath with them as we do it. Yes.
So for my listeners, how would you, like, can you describe for my listeners, like, what's the proper way of using the breath? If any of my listeners have any pain that they're holding on to in certain areas of the body, what would you say to them?
Well, it's a bit of a process, and I do have a YouTube.
Oh,
If you go
yeah.
to the Samadhi Center,
But
it's
what is the
channel.
name of your YouTube? That's
So I'm on with Dan Schmidt.
okay.
He's
We can put
yeah,
that
we can do
in
that
the chat
later.
below.
Yeah, and we can hook up different links in there too. But I have Qigong classes. There's like 20 different Qigong classes.
Oh, cool.
And then there's also 2 videos that I have just on boosting the immune system with the breath. And then the podcast, which we can link to, which is the science and ecology of the breath. And so all of those really kind of break down how you can manage your pain, how you get in tune with how to have a relaxed breath. Sometimes we can overcomplicate breathing exercises. And I think maybe in the beginning, sometimes we really just need to learn the Buddha breath, just to learn how to, which is the passive breath. And then we move into the active breaths later. But people need to calm down. People need to get that somatic craziness just grounding and get the health back, get the organs and cells to relax, because they express our emotions as well. And we need to get in there and get the whole hologram of our consciousness back in sync with itself. Then we can really start playing around with more breathing exercises, because they can take you places. They really can. And there's some pretty wicked, awesome, charge up breathing exercises out there that you can explore. Lots of amazing teachers that have
What's your take on
discovered
Wim Hof?
techniques.
The Wim Hof breathing.
I love Wim Hof.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I was doing cold showers for 10 years and I thought, well, this is great. Cold showers, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, I was very inspired just by what the man went through, to be honest with you. And as a father, to be able to manage that as a single father and to his idea was,
he lost his wife, right? Is that how?
yeah, and he handled everything before they got up. He did, somewhere in there, I believe I heard him say, I wanted to be in that right place for my children when they woke up, so he done all the work, and then he's charged. He's like, right. He's in that good place for his kids. And, but the idea of doing a cold plunges, and it was just at an interesting time in my life where I guess I was going through hormonal changes as well. I'm 50 now. And so going through, my 40s, there were some changes that started to occur, but one of them was frustration, and I was having a hard time. I didn't know where it was coming from because there weren't really things that were driving my frustration. And so it was just, I felt myself short with things. And so I started to do the cold plunges, and I began to realize that it helped me because it was tapping me back into that survival. And I'd get in there and be like, whoa, and I'd have to deal with that emotion. It allowed me a place to release that emotion and express it. And then over time, now I just sing in it. I still do cold baths almost every single day. And
How long? For how long?
well, that depends on where I'm at, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
And so, and if I have any inflammation, then I like to be in there a bit longer. And then I'll sometimes also do a nice hot bath afterwards. Sometimes because I do ecstatic dances, our whole community is into ecstatic dances. And so, sometimes.
Can you share with my listeners very quickly, like, where is it that you live?
Oh, well, I live about half hour northeast of Bancroft. And so I live in the middle of nowhere.
Which is Northern Canada for my listeners.
Yeah. And so we have a good community of people up here, and a lot of them are into, the same type of stuff in their own ways. And, but we all love dancing. And so usually once or twice a month, we get these dances going. And so before I go to a dance, and it's free expression dance, right? And it's usually like anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours.
I should join you.
Oh, you really should. You would love it. Like, they're amazing. And you just feel amazing afterwards. But to get myself prepared for that give, I'll do a cold bath, hot bath, cold bath, hot bath. And then I'm totally just in a row, boom, 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 boom. And then my body is just open. And then I can just let myself go when I'm dancing. And so I find that using that, because the cold water too really connects you with your breathing. You have no choice. Like, no choice. But that's kind of getting away from the breath though. When you're working with the breath, you're working with your true self. This is something that I think we really have to understand, because our breathing does not lie. Mm-hmm. There is an emotion and a breath for every instance that we have. And they change and they interrelate with each other, and they overlap, and they have weird patterns, and they have weird algorithms. And we have to learn how to pick them apart, because they're wrapped up in our traumas. They're wrapped up in our OCDs. They're wrapped up in the things that we try to control. And they're wrapped up in our belief systems. And I can keep going. They're just peel the onion. Right. And when we do this kind of breath work, we really get ourselves more activated for that. I believe in, doing the Qigong and doing the yoga, the Tai Chi, all of those. I believe in any of those mindful exercises that also challenge you enough as well and keep your body physically healthy. Because if you really want to connect, then it's very important that your body can relax and let you go. And so if you're out there exploring, then what's going to happen when your back gets sore? Well, it's like a beacon or like an anchor that pulls you back in again. And so if you're trying to get into the astral body or explore different dimensions or connect with, different beings or whatever it is that you do on that other side, it's important that the body itself will let you, that your emotions will let you, and that overall the ego will let you. And so I have a few words of wisdom that I like to say. The whole kill the ego, destroy your ego, all that, that's combative. It's aggressive. It's not necessary. How about elicit the ego? Down to the root, really, the ego just wants success. So if the ego really just wants success, why don't you just change its trajectory? Be friends with it. Let the two of you work it out, because it's still you anyway.
Have a little dance.
So, yeah. And so together you kind of work out what's needed and what's wanted and try to fix those two to work with each other in that way. And then we kind of, and here's the next part, because I'm going back to the child again, we begin to treat ourselves differently. So when we talk to ourselves, and I think this is probably the most important thing, really, next to the breath, is how we talk to ourselves. Mm-hmm. Who is it we're talking to in there? I mean, people, ask me that question. Well, who is it you think you're talking to in there? Well, to me, the same person I've been talking to since I could talk, and that's me as that child. And so I'm always talking to the inner child when I'm talking. We've become this dual entity in there, and we shouldn't be. We need to integrate and know that we're one whole being. But if you want to just dissect it just for a moment, just to analyze it, then you can see that you're talking to that child. And so my next question is, how would you talk to a child? Like, really, would you berate the child? Would you insult the child? Some people do, yeah. And you know what's going on in there. And so, I mean, for me, it's always been about encouraging the child, boost the child. Yeah, obviously explore reality with the child. Don't over compliment them in the sense where it's not being real either. Mm-hmm. It has to be grounded, but there needs to be that great form of respect and everything with children. And so we have to be able to do that with ourselves. And that builds the internal relationship of love, of self-love. But the breath has to be a part of that as well, because it's very easy to be triggered, and the breath allows us to regain a high level of influence over those triggers. Notice I didn't say control. Yeah. Because we can't always do it. Just at least like, hey, 98% of the time is great. There sometimes you just have shit in your life that just your breath just isn't gonna fix. And so, we have to work through that as well. But in the end, it still allows us to come back to that place. So for me, I find that being honest with myself in my breath allows my breath to teach me how to be honest outwardly as well.
I could listen to you forever. Seriously.
I could ramble forever, and that's the problem.
No, seriously. You're just so knowledgeable. And especially when it comes to the body. Like, I listened to your podcast the other day and I was just like, holy shit. Like, is there anything that you don't know?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I don't know.
Well, I
don't really know how to back up a trailer very well, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. But
sorry.
No, I just strongly feel that, when people start taking control of their own health and well-being, and we could have a whole other conversation when it comes to Western medicine and pharmaceuticals and all of that, because we've just been programmed and programmed and programmed, and more I think people, like you said, I don't really want to say awaken, but people are starting to realize how important it is to now take control of our own well-being through our own foods, through air, through breath, through exercise, through food, you know, and I admire where you are right now. And for my listeners and viewers, and that is, you know, you're practically, well, I guess say living off the grid, but you grow a lot of your own food. You're surrounded by nature. Like you're walking your talk. You definitely are
As
that
much as I can.
as much
Yes.
as you can. Yes.
And we're, I mean, and not just me, my wife as well. Like we're both working toward, that more living the way we feel we really should be living.
Yeah.
And
I
but
admire.
it's a compromise too. We have two teenage boys, and we have to compromise. We have to work with them so
Yeah.
that they don't, look at this and regret it or hate their way of life or whatever. We have to find balance, and so we can't be, like all like iron fist about it either. And so it's important for us to be flexible parents in that as well, and get them interested in it in some ways, here or there. The food that we grow definitely is something that we're learning the process more and more. Learning how to store it is also an important thing to learn. We've gone through trial and error, with different things like that, but
Mhm.
we're also not in any hurry. And so this is something that we're just, feeling out and experiencing and sharing with each other as we're going, and really learning how to develop our land. Like I have this theory in Qigong. I come from a more Taoist background. Doesn't mean I'm Taoist, but what I like to say when I represent Taoism in that is that real connection to nature. And the ancient Taoists formed a lot of their exercises around how they work with nature, like gardening, or like especially gardening, farming, all of those things. And it's kind of a natural way. And for me, I feel I have a very deep relationship with this planet. It's a very strange planet, that's for sure. And I think maybe that's why I
Especially
relate to
nowadays.
it. Yes, exactly. But I don't mean just people. Just remove the people. I just mean the planet itself, its own consciousness. It's such a bizarre, beautiful, amazing consciousness, because it has so much peace
Listen,
and
as
violence
the wind
and
chimes
and
are
beauty
picking up,
and
eh? As
yes, exactly, exactly. And for me, Earth consciousness is one of the levels of consciousness that I feel I went through as I opened more to the consciousness of the universe. But my energy is going back into it. So when my wife and I are working in the garden, we're applying our energy to it, and the chi to it, and then that comes back. That's a sustainable energy.
yes,
And
yes.
so that's biological and natural energy, sustainable energy. And that's something that we're really learning how to cultivate more and more as we're doing it. And so it's not just breath. And we live in a forest, and that helps, that's for sure.
Hmm.
And so plenty of oxygen here.
Yeah. You just stopped right there.
That when I realize I'm rambling.
Okay. And for once my listeners get to hear someone else than just me speaking. So it's a treat. It's also a treat for me. But um, so when it comes to finding you, David, and people wanting to know more about you, because I have a feeling they're gonna be intrigued after listening to this and may want to look you up more. Are you under Cheekology or are you under just David?
Yeah. Well, Cheekology will connect me through any, probably, like search finder or whatever. So if you go to YouTube and type in Cheekology, I'll
Which
spell
is,
that.
spell that, please.
QI. Yeah, so it's QICOLOGY. And that just means the study of life force energy,
I
right?
love
So G means life force. And so what is life force, right? So then we explore that and explore, what is life force in itself. To me, life force is the energy that is derived from the activity of life. And it is an infinite feedback loop.
Okay, before we sign off, because I did say, it only went to take about
Yes.
30 minutes of your time. You have to do this for me, my listeners. I can't believe I'm going to ask this, but I hope you'll do it. Can you do Yoda for me, please?
Yoda, you want me to do, yes? The force is with you, yes. Oh, always. Yeah, you know what? Go back and watch Empire Strikes Back, and you will there are so many amazing the true teachings of Yoda is in Empire Strikes Back, which is why it's my favorite movie. The training sequence with Luke and what he has to go through with Yoda, there's so many metaphors in that. Like even when he has to go down into the cave, which is like us going into our own self-exploration. And when he meets Vader, who identifies as his father, this dark side kind of person, which a lot of people have, like it represents that parent anyway, right? And then when he, the interesting part of it is that he lights his lightsaber first, so it shows that he's reactive. He's the one moving to aggression too quickly, and then when he decapitates, spoiler, when he cuts off Vader's head and it rolls, the face mask explodes, and it's Luke's face. It's his own face, showing that. And the great thing about this is, as he's about to go in, he says to Yoda, "What am I going to find in there?" And Yoda says, "Only what you bring with you."
Love it.
He grabs his weapons. He starts to put his weapons on, and Yoda says, "Need those, you will not." And Luke just gives him a look like, "Yeah, whatever." Typical youth, right? Yeah, whatever. Locks on those weapons, and in he goes. And that is what he has to face now. And so we have to be very careful what we choose our intentions to be when we go into meditation as well, and when we lock our breath into it as well, because that's something that you want to make sure that you're working through. And you always want to make sure that you're not trying to get out of something. You need to go through it. The only way out is through. And so we have to go through the whole breath right to the end, complete its exhalation, and receive it.
Yeah, we'll have to do another podcast just on breath work alone. How you described it when I listened to yours a while back, which is important. And one thing that I do say to my clients too is try to be more of the observer. Check in on your body from time to time and observe. Are you holding the breath? Is it running smoothly? Just tap in and check in, tap into and turn on. Right. And so I think if people practice that throughout their day, is checking in, observe the vessel, observe your body, and just check in with the breath. And
you can never do that too much.
You can't. But no. What it is that every day people are just so caught up in their 9 to 5. They're just their daily routine that they don't stop to allow themselves to observe, but more importantly, to feel.
Yeah, but they'll certainly reboot their phone the moment they notice there's an issue with
that's a whole can of worms.
They got to reboot themselves, right?
Yeah. Reboot. Yes. Reboot. That's a great way of saying it. Time to reboot, time to recharge.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. If I can just say, because I have a few different things on the go, I do have a music project with my friend Daniel Schmidt, and it's called The Fractal Verse, and it's all journey music. And we have 13 albums, and you can tell just by the cover what kind of journey it is, or by the name of the album what kind of journey it is. They're anywhere from 2 to 4 hours.
Now, is it safe for me to say that there's some kind of psychedelic substance?
Oh, we just put out a video too. Oh, yes. Okay, so that. So what this is you can either take entheogens with it, which like mushrooms, whatever, that kind of thing, right? Like little psychedelics or whatever. Or if you don't like the idea of that, but have always wanted to explore it, our music gives a lot of that sensation. We've had a lot of people that don't do drugs or don't do any type of psychedelics or entheogens or anything like that, who have expressed that our music allows them to go, or at least where they feel that's what they're experiencing.
Allow themselves to go.
Yeah, and it allows them to journey without having to take a substance in that sense.
Beautiful.
And and it's beautiful music. And a lot of it's one of our sayings is we meditate to make music to meditate to.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I hope my listeners will tap into that as well, right? Because I'm a believer in plant medicine. So
yes. Me too.
All right, brother.
And then there's times when you don't, right? So it's just all listen.
Yeah.
All like observe, listen, and
that could be a whole other podcast right there.
Oh God, yeah.
All right.
Well, it's been an
Okay.
honor. I appreciate you asking me
And
to come
thank Natasha for allowing me to, should I say, keep you all to myself,
on. She doesn't mind at all.
kidnapped you into this podcast and sharing your wisdom. I hope my listeners at least take away something from this. Is there
Yes, I
anything
hope
you
so as
want to
well.
say? Is there any advice? Is there anything that you would like to share,
I
with
think I just
my
wrapped
audience?
it up. If there's one thing I would really like to just really try to get across with people is you got to stop being hard on yourself. It gets you nowhere except in a hard place.
Yeah,
So,
true.
forgiveness is the ultimate power, and it's got to start with yourself first.
Yourself.
You
I say,
can't you can't
well,
make it. You can't make change like this an obligation. You can't do it because you hate yourself. You have to do it because you love yourself,
love
or
your
else it's just an obligation. If you love yourself, then oh my God, it becomes an inspiration.
totally.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, bro. I'm just going to turn off the
Thank
recording.
you.
And if you could just hang on.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And for my listeners and viewers, thank you for joining another episode for Spirit Chat. And please feel free to leave your thoughts. If you have any questions for my brother, reach out to me. I'll be happy to share the link and all that stuff. And hopefully I can add it on in my introduction when I write it out. Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.